Hey everyone, this week we have a few moving parts. So there's a bit that's going on this week. So if you get turned around a little bit, or if the logistics are just a little bit more challenging than you have time for this week, reach out and let me know. We can definitely work something out. You're going to read this week about how to focus your project and start thinking through some of the nuts and bolts decisions that you have to make for a research study. Like, where are you going to do this study? Who are you going to involve in your project? What kind of access do you have to those folks? What kind of time do you have to do this kind of project? So logistical things that are pretty important to think about. You're also going to learn about how to write an annotated bibliography entry and a literature review. All these things are connected in the Blixley and Fleischer. They explain the connections there. But you're going to learn about annotated bibliography and literature reviews. And I want to touch on some of these things. So let me start first with annotated bibliography entries. Annotated bibliography entries are helpful summaries of a source that also includes a conversation about the relevance of that source to a topic that you're working on. So they range between 200 and 250-ish words all the way up to, probably 400 or 500 at the very most. And they don't go much longer than that because their chief utility is their brevity. They quickly summarize the main points of the project, and then they reflect on how that project that that article that you read, or that book that you read, how that source is going to be relevant to a project that you're working on. So they're very helpful documents. So you're going to write one of these annotated bibliography entries, and I want you to include that as part of your 15 for the research journal. So you're going to share that this week. You don't have to share everything that shows up in your research journal until we get to the midterms, then you're sharing it with me. But I want people to start sharing some of their annotated bibliography, share an annotated bibliography entry. You're going to make that available on the discussion board, and I'll take a look at that and give you some feedback on it. It's such a kind of a common thing in higher ed. I think it's good to get some feedback on those. They're meant to be helpful. They're meant to be useful for you to recall information. They're also helpful for other researchers to take a look at. And they can decide whether or not they want to read more. But chiefly, probably most importantly, that they're helpful for you because they help you explain for yourself what you thought the key takeaways were for something that you read, and then you're also kind of able to reconnect with a source more quickly when you read that brief summary and you need to write about it and say like a literature review, which we'll talk about next. You're going to write a literature review later this semester. It's towards the end of the semester that you're going to write a literature review, but I want you all to think about them a little bit now. Literature reviews are, again, very helpful documents because they summarize an academic conversation about a particular topic, and they kind of break down that conversation into different sub-conversations or different categories of ways that people talk about that larger phenomena. A few years ago, I worked with some colleagues for my master's degree program at California State University, San Marcos. We were a pretty tight-knit group. We wanted to write a textbook about developmental writing. We got together, and I was asked to put together, kind of a report on what is the scholarship around developmental writing. So I went, read the literature, wrote some annotated bibliography entries, and ended up writing a report, which is more or less a literature review. Like, here's what people are saying about developmental writing. So they're very helpful documents. They helped us make a decision about where we were going to go with that textbook project, but they're also helpful for folks that are learning. They're getting introduced to a topic, and it gives them kind of the lay of the land. So again, another very helpful document. Literature reviews are often included in master's thesis. They're often included in journal articles, academic book projects. They're used in those situations to help readers locate your project in that larger conversation. In some sense, I don't want to call it a gatekeeping thing, but it's kind of like you did your homework. Like, you're not asking a research question that's already kind of been addressed, or you're taking a take on a research question that's already been addressed, and you set that up with your read of the literature. So that's one reason literature reviews are written. Again, they're meant to be reader friendly in that they identify trends that you've noticed in that scholarly conversation, and you provide readers with a helpful way of breaking down that larger conversation. In the supplemental resources folder, I linked to some literature reviews, or I think I mentioned a few literature reviews that you could take a look at on the compile annotated bibliographies and literature reviews. They have different topics in writing studies, and they have literature reviews and annotated bibliography entries around them. So if you want to take a look at some, they're there. I'll talk more about literature reviews later this semester, but I want to put that on your radar now, is that all those sources that you're putting together for your research journal, at some point you're going to need to start putting together a narrative for how, what are the different sub-conversations within some of those sources. And you can definitely add after the midterm project, but you're going to need to start crafting a narrative about how, what are these different smaller conversations that you're noticing within that larger conversation about that topic that you've been researching. Probably the most important task you're going to complete this week is completing a conversation with a peer in the class. I sometimes call this a conceptual conversation. It kind of helps you think through a project and think through the parameters of a project so that you have a little bit more direction going forward. You're going to begin by posting something on Tuesday about your project, and there's a prompt in there in the discussion board, like, here's your draft research question, and here's where you are with your topic so far. That's going to help your peer put together some questions to ask you based on what it is you're studying, but also what you've read in Blakesley and Fleischer this week, that conversation about the logistical issues that go into deciding on where you're going to conduct your study. As you prepare for your conversation, I want you to pay close attention to pages 60 to 67. In those pages, Blakesley and Fleischer, they write about how you go about selecting your research site and how you start thinking about access to participants, the kind of participants that you might ask to be a part of your study. Again, just kind of getting into some of the logistics of conducting a study and thinking about how much time you have to do some of this stuff. Pay close attention to those pages. As you're developing questions for your peer, those questions should be generated out of what you've read there, but also just kind of like, this is somebody that wants to complete this study. What kind of questions do they need to start asking themselves now? How much time they have, things like that. So you're going to prepare some questions for your peer. That peer is going to prepare some questions for you. You guys are going to have a conversation, and then you're going to write up a summary of that conversation and connect it to things that you read in Blakesley and Fleischer this week. It should be a helpful thing that you receive from your peer and that you're going to provide to your peer. So put a little bit of time in that. Again, if there's questions about that, or if the logistics of kind of meeting up prove pretty difficult, reach out to me and let me know. So these are going to be a little bit of a pain, but I do think they're worth it because they help you articulate where you are with something, and they also help you kind of hear, you describe your project and answer questions about your project. I think you're going to probably realize something as you're having that conversation. So I hope you find this a very helpful thing. I've had these kind of conversations with colleagues, and I've helped colleagues out by asking them the kind of questions that you guys are going to embark upon this upcoming week, and the feedback that I've received is that it's super helpful, and I would say it's been helpful for my own research and my own scholarship. So a quick rundown of what's due this week. So you're first going to post your annotated bibliography entry to the discussion board by the end of Tuesday the 31st, Tuesday of week 4. You should absolutely add this to your research journal entries that's going to be due for the midterm project, those 15 sources. So this is one of them. Second thing you'll do is you're going to post your preliminary research question and your response to prompt 3.2 in Blakesley and Fleischer. That's also going to be due by Tuesday. That is going to help your peer develop some questions, and it's going to help guide that conversation that you're going to have with your peers. So help them out and provide some detail about where you are with the research question and the topic that you're thinking about. So answer that prompt 3.2. So by the end of week 4, you're going to have that conversation with your peer. And I have some assignments. It's in the lesson assignment folder. So I paired folks up, and you're going to write up a description of that conversation and connect it to what you learned in Blakesley and Fleischer. You'll email that description, and it can be in any format you want. A letter, it's up to you. A letter with some bulleted lists. However you want to go about it, try to make it. Don't belabor it too much. Don't put a ton of time into formatting and stuff like that. Put time into providing something useful for your peer. So you're going to email that description to me and to your peer, and send that back. Send that feedback to them. So that's what's going on this week. Looking ahead in week 5, we're going to talk about human subjects research and the Institutional Review Board. You'll need to submit by the end of week 5. You'll need to submit your human subjects research training. So you might want to start looking into that now. I've talked to a few folks about that when I've been able to meet with them. So you'll want to look at your options on the SSU training resources page, and I'll post a link in the video description. Again, if you guys have any questions, if you're just having a hard time to meet up, let me know. I'm happy to help out and to work something out. But I hope you all have a great week, get some good feedback, provide something useful to your peers, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye now.